Kody Brown's life is a mess again. His kids recently humiliated him in front of everyone, in the middle of everything. But Kody didn't say anything, which was strange, because he loved his wife Robin Brown. He was quiet, but his eyes showed a lot of anguish. The main cause for this grief is that Christine Brown left Kody's life and started dating David Yulin. This breakup left a profound scar in Kody's heart that he could never talk about, save to one of his kids. The way Kody looked at her and didn't say anything seemed to say that, even after everything, it was really hard to hide the pain of a broken heart. The sun was just starting to set over Flagstaff, casting a soft golden light over the quiet Brown household. But inside, emotions were running high like a storm. It was supposed to be a calm family dinner, with Kody Brown trying to get everyone together under one roof, which is hard to do these days. Plates clinked, kids talked, and Robin Brown, always the caretaker, moved around making sure everyone had what they needed. But there was a lot of tension in the air. Kody sat at the head of the table, forcing a smile, but his eyes showed that a storm was brewing inside. Then it occurred. One of Kody's older kids, who was clearly upset, stood up and said, "Why do you only listen to Robin? Why don't you care about the rest of us like you used to?" The voice cracked, shaking with both anger and pain. Another child said, "You let Christine go. You didn't fight for her, Dad. You let her walk away like she didn't matter." Everyone stopped talking. The room was still. Kody didn't shout or bang on the table. He just stared down at his plate and took long breaths. His hands shook a little, which was the only sign that he was upset. The agony in his eyes said more than words ever could. He looked across the table and accidentally saw an empty chair, Christine's chair. She hadn't been at the table in months, but her absence was still very strong. Every day, he remembered how she used to calm the storms, how she always found a way to make even the hardest conversations funny. And now she was gone. Gone to start a new life with David Yulin, a man Kody had never met but somehow hated more than anyone else. Not out of spite, but out of jealousy. David got the version of Christine that Kody had taken for granted, the one that loved fiercely, laughed freely, and hoped for better days. Kody never thought she'd actually leave. He thought she'd threaten to leave, maybe even pack a bag or two, but she was always part of the family. But this time, she really walked away. And with her, she took a piece of Kody's heart. Robin leaned over and gently put her palm on his, as if to tell him that she was still there, faithful and loving. But even she could see that Kody's heart wasn't complete anymore. Kody went outside after supper. The cold desert air was stinging, but he liked it. It helped ease the pain in his chest. One of his teenage daughters silently followed him outside. She was the only person Kody had ever spoken his secrets to. She stood next to him and murmured softly, "Dad, you miss her, don't you?" Kody didn't answer immediately away. He stared up at the stars and his eyes sparkled. Finally, he nodded. More than I could ever say. There was no big outburst or tears. Just a devastated guy attempting to keep his family together while one piece, the one shaped like Christine, was gone forever. His daughter said in the dark, "It's okay to hurt, Dad. Even if you never tell anyone else, I see it. I see you." He wrapped an arm around her shoulder, hugged her close, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself cry. The wind in the desert brought his silent goodbye to Christine, wherever she was. But in the quiet town of Flagstaff, Arizona, the dust of drama had barely settled over the Brown family. With the once tight-knit plural marriage unraveling at the seams, the emotional wake left behind had started stirring old names, familiar faces, and memories long buried. The sister wives weren't just dealing with broken relationships, they were being forced to confront the ghosts of former friends and ex-lovers. It all started when Mary got a letter in the mail that she wasn't expecting. The return address was smeared, but the handwriting was very recognizable. It was from Annie, her best friend from her teenage years and a confidant throughout the first few years of her marriage to Kody. It had been more than 20 years since they last spoke. Annie had briefly dated Kody in high school before he chose Mary, and the tension had always been there, like smoke in the air. The letter was friendly but careful. "Mary, I know it's been a long time, but I've been following your path. I'm sorry for how things turned out between us. I'm in Flagstaff for a few weeks. I'd love to meet you if you're open to it. Mary was shocked. She read the letter 3 times, and her mind was filled with bittersweet memories of laughing under the stars, sharing secrets late at night, and the sad goodbye that ended their friendship. Christine was also coping with her own ghosts. While recording a food part for her internet show, she ran across Joe Miller, her ex-boyfriend from before she joined the Brown family. Joe had become older, but his smile was still the same. They said hello and chatted up over coffee. He had heard that she had left Kody and said kind things to her. "You are stronger now," he added. "You don't have to be a minor character in your own life." Christine thought about those remarks for a long time after he departed. She didn't know how much she had lost herself in trying to fit into a family that never really saw her. Eventually, Kody heard about Christine's meeting with Joe and Mary's reunion with Annie. It upset him, not because he was jealous, but because he saw that the ladies he thought would always be there were starting to seek for the lives they could have had without him. He said Robin in private, "I never thought they would look back. I thought I was their destiny." Robin, tired from trying to keep the broken family together, said, "Maybe they were your destiny, but that doesn't mean you were theirs." Mary and Annie met at a little cafe in their neighborhood. The awkward silence between them rapidly turned into a warm, heartfelt chat. "I was hurt, Annie. Not just because of Kody, but also because you weren't there for me when I needed you." Annie nodded. "I know. I'm sorry. I was scared and immature, but I never stopped caring about you." They talked for hours. For the first time in years, Mary felt like someone saw her for who she really was, not as a wife or an ex-wife. Christine thought about Joe more and more. But it wasn't just him that interested her. It was the way she used to be, bold, fun-loving, and independent. She asked Joe to come to a family picnic with her kids. It wasn't romantic, it was healing. It was a full-circle event that showed her she could start over and honor both the person she used to be and the person she was becoming. As the weeks went by, things slowly began to change. Mary started going to community events again, this time with Annie by her side. Christine started working with other influencers and even thought about dating again. Janelle also found strength in the changes and reconnected with a college friend who offered to help her start a wellness business. At the same time, Kody had a hard time holding on to the identity he had constructed as a husband to many. He had to examine whether the foundation he built his life on was ever stable to begin with, as his ex-wives were finding strength in their former connections and friendships. In the end, the return of old friends and lovers didn't cause chaos. It brought clarity. The women in the Brown family weren't stuck in the past. They were learning from it. Sometimes, healing doesn't mean going back. It means accepting the past with grace and moving forward with confidence. Christine wrote in her journal one night, "We thought we needed Kody to feel whole, but maybe we were whole all along. We just forgot where to look." But the Brown family met in Christine's backyard before the sun rose over Flagstaff. It was one of those rare mornings when all 4 sister wives, Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin, were in the same place as Kody. The kids were running around the yard and laughing, but the adults were there for a serious reason: school. The family was tense because they didn't know which kids should go back to school in person. The pandemic had turned everything upside down the year before, and now that things were slowly getting back to normal, the Browns had to figure out what was best for their kids. Janelle, who is always sensible and intelligent, started the conversation. She flipped through a hefty bundle of printed information and said, "I've looked at the guidelines. The schools are reopening with precautions. I think Hunter and Gabriel are old enough to handle the responsibility. They miss the structure." Christine nodded in agreement. Truly has been begging to go back. She's tired of sitting in front of a screen. It's making her feel bad. I think she needs it for her mental health. Robin looked unsure. "I get that, but what about Ariella and Solomon? They're still young. I'm just not sure I'm ready to send them out yet. What if they bring something home?" Mary quietly added, "Leon is grown, but if I had to choose right now, I'd think about both sides. Safety is important, but so is connection." These kids have already lost so much. Kody got up and started to pace. It's complicated. Each house has its own needs. Maybe we shouldn't make a group decision. Maybe it's time to accept that we don't work the same way we used to. Robin looked saddened. Are you saying we're not a family anymore? Kody stopped pacing. I'm saying we're not the same family we were a year ago. Pretending otherwise is just making things worse. Janelle took a big breath. Maybe we should make decisions house by house. Each mother can choose what's best for her kids. We've always said we believe in choice, so let's give ourselves the same grace. Christine laughed and said, I like that idea. She said she would send Truly back with safety measures, such as a mask and sanitizer, and she would stay in touch with the school. Robin looked down, then at Kody. I'm still scared, but maybe we can do it part-time. Just a few days a week for Solomon to get used to it. Kody nodded and said, I agree. Mary, who had generally been quiet, finally rose up. We're not perfect, but I think we're doing something right by being here and talking this out together. As the adults started to relax, the kids began to congregate around the table and ask for food. The adults became more like parents as Christine handed out lemonade, Janelle threw out granola bars, and Kody tried to break up a fight over a soccer ball. For a short time, they were a family again, even though they were broken and imperfect. The parents knew for sure that there were no perfect answers, only love, communication, and trying their best as the kids played in the golden light of the Arizona sun. But it was a frigid night in Flagstaff. The mountains were covered with snow, and Kody Brown's home was quiet. The warmth of the fireplace couldn't melt the frost he felt in his heart. Kody sat on the edge of his couch with his elbows on his knees, looking at the family photo on the wall. It was from years ago, when all of his wives and kids were all happy together. Those days felt like a dream today. The love seemed far away and strained. Robin came into the room and set down a cup of tea next to him. You've been quiet all day, she murmured. Kody groaned and rubbed his face. I don't feel the love anymore, Robin. Not from anyone. Robin sat next to him and looked into his eyes. You know they love you, Kody. Just, maybe not the same way they used to. He shook his head. Christine is gone. Janelle hardly ever answers my calls. Mary, well, she's been emotionally checked out for years. And now even you. I feel like you're just putting up with me. Robin looked wounded and said, That's not fair. Kody said, Maybe not, but it's how I feel. Janelle sat at the kitchen table in her new apartment and looked through old texts from Kody. She smiled at the memories, but it quickly faded. Then her phone buzzed with another message from Kody asking if they could talk. Mary had just come back from Utah, where she had been visiting her new bed and breakfast. She stood on her porch and looked at the pine-covered hills. I don't miss that pain, she said softly. I miss the family, but not the pain. Kody sat in the living room and stared at the fireplace, his thoughts racing with questions he couldn't answer. He murmured, What happened to us? Robin thought for a moment before speaking. You stopped listening, we stopped talking, and the love turned into expectation. None of us could keep up. Kody's fists were tight. I gave this family everything. I know, Robin murmured, laying her hand over his. But maybe they needed something else than what you were giving. Kody planned a family dinner later that week, which doesn't happen very often these days. He invited everyone, including Christine, who had officially left, and Robin. Most of them didn't come. Christine politely said no. Janelle sent a short message saying, Maybe next time. Mary came, but didn't say much during the meal. Kody stood at the head of the table and smiled. I just wanted us to have one evening together, like we used to. Mary looked him in the eye. But Kody, we're not the same people anymore. The words hit him harder than he thought they would. Kody was alone again that night while Robin slowly cleaned the dishes and the table was cleared. The home was quiet, and the fun of the past was gone. He gazed at the family picture again and said, Maybe I wasn't the glue. Maybe I was just holding on too tightly. Weeks went by. Kody started therapy, which he had felt he didn't need. Robin was there for him. Little by little, he started to connect with his kids more directly. He was less controlling and more present. Mary and Janelle started to recover on their own. Christine, who was now in Utah, had found serenity. Love was still there. It had just altered. And maybe that was fine. But based on the made-up relationships in Sister Wives, Kody Brown sat quietly on the edge of his bed, his fingers interlocked and his head bowed. The once happy home, which was full of laughter and children's chatter, now echoed with hurt and tension. He felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on him, not from outside sources, but from the very heart of his family. Christine, his third wife, had always been the one who was full of life, brave, passionate, and very devoted to her kids. But ever since she decided to leave the plural marriage, Kody felt more than just a quiet departure. He now thought Christine had done something much worse. She had turned the whole family against him. It started with whispers, little complaints from the kids, things Janelle said, and even Mary's growing distance. At first, Kody thought it was just the normal effects of change. But when his own kids started to pull away, not answering his calls or letting him be part of family decisions, he started to put the pieces together. Kody told Robin one night, "I gave everything to this family," his voice full of anger. "And now they look at me like I'm the bad guy. Christine poisoned them." Robin, the only wife still with him, tried to calm him down, but she was shaken too. The emotional gap between Kody and his kids, especially Christine's daughters, had grown into a chasm. Holidays were awkward, group texts were silent, and even Truly, his youngest with Christine, seemed distant during visits. Christine, on the other hand, had thrived in her new freedom. She made a new life for herself and her kids in Utah. Her social media was full of smiles, cooking videos, and updates on her cozy home. Fans cheered her on, thanking her for taking charge of her life. Kody, on the other hand, thought something sinister was going on. "She tells them I never cared, that I was only there for show," Kody told the camera in a private interview. "She tells them I favored Robin, that I was never there, and now they believe her. I feel like a stranger to my own kids." He started contacting people one at a time in an effort to fix things. Some, like Gabriel and Garrison, hardly answered. Isabel was courteous but distant. Only a handful of the younger kids still liked him. Each frigid interaction hurt more than the last. Tensions boiled over at a rare family reunion put on by TLC. Christine stayed calm but forceful. "I never told the kids to hate you," she said directly. "They saw what they saw, Kody. They felt what they felt. You were distant. You picked favorites. I didn't have to say a word." Mary remained still with her arms folded. Janelle softly agreed. Robin cried as she tried to defend Kody, but it was too late. Kody glanced at the circle of individuals he used to call family. Now they were broken, with their emotions on opposite sides. Finally, he replied, "I'm not perfect," his voice shaking. "But I didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve to be the bad guy." Christine's gaze softened for a moment, but she didn't back down. "We both made choices. Now we have the consequences." Kody stepped out alone as the cameras turned off. The lowering light formed long shadows on the pavement. It was still unclear if he would ever be able to get back what he had lost. But one thing was clear: grief, truth, and the effects of love gone wrong had changed the ties that used to hold the Brown family together, maybe forever. But the cold wind blew through the cul-de-sac in Flagstaff, making the bare trees rustle. The Brown family's once busy homes were eerily quiet. Tension had wrapped itself around the family like a storm cloud that wouldn't move. Mary Brown was in the middle of it all, tired, heartbroken, and more alone than ever before. She stood by the window of her house and watched the sun set behind the mountains. She held a picture of her family from years ago in her hand, which shook a little. Christine was smiling in the picture, her arm around Janelle, with Robin and Mary standing close by. And Kody, who was still the center of it all, was beaming with what looked like pride. That was before the fall. There was no family gathering, no emotional goodbyes. She just loaded up a U-Haul, made up her mind, and refused to stay where she didn't feel loved. She said it was about Kody, the neglect, the loss of intimacy, the broken promises. But for Mary, it was much deeper and more personal. Weeks later, Mary and Robin sat at the kitchen table, both quiet. Finally, Mary's voice broke through the silence. She didn't just leave Kody. She went away. All of us. It was like we weren't her family. Robin's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything. How could she? The wounds were still raw, and the family was broken beyond repair. Mary decided to drive to Utah to confront Christine, even though everyone told her not to. Christine was in a cozy new home in Murray, Utah, with new furnishings, a warm fire, and the smell of cookies baking. She smiled in surprise as Mary came in, but Mary didn't smile back. Mary's voice was hoarse when she questioned, "How could you just leave? You didn't even say goodbye to the kids, to me." Christine's smile faded. "I had to go, Mary. Staying with that family was killing me inside. You know that. Then why act like it for so long? Why make me think we were sisters?" Christine's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let up. "We were sisters. But you saw how it was. Kody only made time for Robin. You and I were drowning. I chose to save myself. And let us sink." Mary was alone in her house in Flagstaff. Robin had stopped coming over. Kody had become reclusive, distracted by the parts of his once great family structure falling apart. Janelle had grown distant, focusing more on her adult children and business activities than the fading sisters. Mary looked over old texts with Christine. There were pictures of them smiling, traveling, and even crying together. What had happened to that bond? Weeks later, Christine wrote a letter. There was no text or call, just a handwritten letter that came on a snowy morning. "Mary, I'm sorry for how I left. I was in pain, but I didn't know how to say it without shattering something. I still love you as a sister. But there are times when we need to leave the people we love behind to rediscover ourselves again. Don't believe I left you behind. I just had to stay alive. Dear Christine." Mary held the letter tightly and cried for the first time in weeks. Mary went back to Utah months later. This time she didn't come with accusations, but with hope. They met at a little cafe, hugged tightly, and talked for hours. Not everything was forgiven, but the door had opened just enough to let the light back in. The family might have broken apart, and trust might have been lost. But as long as there was still room for honesty and healing, there was still a hope, even if it didn't look like it did previously. And maybe that was fine. Hi, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. I'm Sabrina, and I hope you're having a great day. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel.